Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for those people who have their natal Saturn in the 12th house, the karmic planet in the karmic house. Whoa, that's really something. And I think that one of the first things I would say about it is that people who have this placement may feel like life is working against them. And this is something to guard against because the 12th house is Pisces' house, and that it can be the house of self-sabotage, maybe feeling sorry for oneself, that self-pity, that victimization. And sometimes, victimization is coming from a very real place. I'm not saying that people who feel sorry for themselves don't have anything to feel sorry about. But when the person identifies as a victim, they're looking for reasons to feel like a victim. And this is where it gets a little bit muddy. And it's funny because the 12th house can be that fog. Neptune is a ruler of Pisces, a ruler of this house. And Neptune is associated with fog and clouds and illusion and confusion too. And the reason is that you can perceive something in a distorted way. Neptune can be distortion. And, kind of make it fit your narrative that you need to kind of like, we call it your story. So what is your story? Do you have this tale of woe about your life? And so anyway, the fact that it's in the 12th house, Saturn, and we think about what the 12th house represents. This is a hermit's house. So this is about spirituality, for sure, especially as it pertains to past lives. That's why I said it's a karmic house. And Saturn is this planet of karma, the lord of karma. And how that translates with Saturn is that it is supposed to be giving us these lessons. I'm a little bit, I don't want to use the word resistant, but I'm not in alignment with that particular depiction of Saturn as giving us lessons, because that implies something that I don't want our karma to imply. When you talk about lessons, it almost comes across as you're talking about punishment. And I believe that we're choosing these things at a higher level, all of us. That it's not being done to us from God or what have you, and saying, okay, you treated those people terribly in another lifetime. Now you're going to have the shoe on the other foot. See how you like it. I think it's more like you saying, okay, looking at your life review from your past life and saying, wow, okay, I did that, and I don't think that that was really my highest self-expression. So I think I'm going to experience how it would feel to have that, to be in that position of the person who received my treatment, and to see that perspective. I think that would be a very interesting thing for my soul to experience. And, taking away this idea of punishment and, getting your just desserts and that kind of thing. So when I say karmic planet in the karmic house, I'm talking about karma being action. That's what the word karma means. Not anything about punishment. But as a result of this, you may go around feeling guilty and you don't know why. And because this is the house of past lives, the fact that you have Saturn here, you may have done something that you have not forgiven yourself for, or maybe some things. And it is possible that this will come out in the form of people that are against you. Actually, the 12th house is the house of hidden enemies. So I think that's why, because I was compiling a list here based on some things that the websites were saying, and they mentioned. Well, I put down karma from hidden enemies you hurt before. So and they really went into this stuff. I'm not even gonna give those examples because I don't like to think of it. Even if it's from another lifetime, it just seems a little bit intense to me. But it is the house of hidden enemies, even though they didn't put it that way. So I was thinking, that's probably what they mean. So that's a perfect example. If we get victimized by someone, and in some cases we never see it coming because of the way that they come at us, and it just seems like we can't protect ourselves from it because it happens like very out of nowhere or what have you. It's not something that we actively knew about. It's very tempting to fall into this idea of you might say to yourself that you're a magnet for these unfortunate events. And really, if you look at it, if you flip the script and say, well, there must be a reason for this. I don't know what it is, but I'm not going to think that this is a random chaotic universe and I'm just like this eternal victim. There has to be a reason. I had a book by this man. I can't remember how to pronounce his name. It was like Ray, and I forgot. He was of Indian descent, like Easeren. Some of you probably know who he is because he wrote a bunch of books about meditation, and I think he did a translation of the Bhagavad Gita that was very popular. But I remember opening one of his books. This was like 30 years ago or more, maybe 40 years ago, come to think of it. And he said, accept your karma happily. And I never forgot that because I have Saturn in Pisces, and that's like having Saturn in the 12th house. So if you have Saturn in Pisces in the 12th house, wow. But in any case, I immediately resonated with that because you know how like something bad happens and the first thing you say is, why me? Or why did this have to happen? And his take was, accept it happily, meaning that, it's not like, yes, sir, may have another. Not like that kind of happy, but just saying, you know, this is, I'm not going to feel upset that this is happening to me. So the 12th house is a house of addiction, and it really is the house of transcendence. Okay. So I've always been fascinated to watch somebody on opiates like nodding off because I know that, it is described as this transcendent experience. Now, obviously, that's, overstated because the person may be chasing that initial high and they end up being in a hellish state, but they're looking for that. I'm talking about very heavy duty drugs like that. And this idea of trying to merge with God and lose yourself completely. I think that's the main thing, is losing yourself. The 12th house is the house of the collective, like the 11th house, but the collective soul. So, we're all individuals, but we're all part of God. It's that paradoxical, unified concept. And so you can do that through spiritual practices like meditation and things like that, or you can, or altered states of consciousness that are coming from spiritual practices, not from. I'm not even talking about the plant medicines. either. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like ayahuasca or anything. I'm talking about spiritual practices. Or you can do it through chemical means. And so if somebody is a junkie, they're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to lose their individuality because they feel so much pain. They may feel a lot of self-hatred, and they want to get rid of that, and they want to merge with God. And they're doing it with a very hardcore drug experience. And of course, the problem with that is, first of all, it's temporary. It's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing. People die doing that, die physically doing that, taking these types of drugs. There's always the potential for an OD. There is, it's not bringing clarity of mind. It's actually fogging the mind even more so and creating physical dependency. And obviously I'm separating it from the plant medicines. But even with those, that's very hip nowadays. And I always say to people that those kinds of things can, the doors of perception, wasn't that William Blake or something like that, where the band The Doors got their name from. But once you open the door, you have to walk through the door. You don't just keep opening the door, right? And that's what Ram Dass, a contemporary spiritual teacher who passed, and I think it was in 2000, or was it I was going to say 1999, 2019, I'm not quite sure, but recently in the last year, he died, and he was one of my favorite spiritual authors. I loved Be Here Now was his most famous work, but I loved the Dharma Bums. So, no, that's Jack Kerouac. I'm sorry, mixing up people there. But he had a book. What was it? I can't think of it. Ram Dass. He had another book. Grist for the Mill. That's the one that I really liked. But anyway, so these kinds of, he said something like that because he was part of that experimenting with acid, and in these government programs. He was a psychologist or psychiatrist, and with Timothy Leary, I think he was with him. And he decided just to go and not use those substances anymore because he felt he had gotten the lessons from it. So if you're somebody who feels like either you feel that calling to do that, or you have been experimenting with it, with those plant medicines in the quest for finding enlightenment, that may be something that is, worthwhile for you, but look to see that you're not just continuously doing it because you keep looking for it outside of yourself. Because one of the things I put down here is escapism into religious ecstasy or intoxicants. But I do want to separate it from, like heroin or something like that, because some people think drugs are drugs. And with ayahuasca, I've heard that is not like a party drug. That is something that's very, very intense and very wrenching emotionally. But even like, mushrooms and peyote, in Mexico, the peyoteras, those women these people, and they would do it ceremonially. They were very conscious of it. So looking at that type of behavior and making sure that you're doing it intentionally, with full awareness of your motivations, what can possibly happen as a result, and not just escapism. You may feel a sense of generalized anxiety. That's what I put down because they were talking about just feeling anxious altogether. And generalized anxiety is you can't pinpoint where it's coming from. I believe that is karmic. When you can't pinpoint where it's coming from, whether it's a phobia that doesn't make sense, that doesn't have any connection to trauma in this lifetime, or just a very like, gosh, what is that term I would use? You're just very anxious, but I was thinking of something else, just high strung and that kind of thing, and you don't know why. It could be from trauma in another lifetime that is still plaguing you. People with this position can feel lonely, but they're self-enforced isolation. So that could be something that you are either exacerbating, like you're making it worse because of your attitudes, or that you are creating itself. You may be the kind of person who naturally enjoys being alone. See where your sun is. Is your sun in conjunction with Saturn, or also in the 12th house? And it's important to note that you can have more than one sign in a particular house with the uneven house system, Placidus. So it's important to see the actual natal chart to see if there's something else going on, because you might have Saturn in Libra and you might have your sun in Virgo and still have them both in the 12th house, even if they're not in conjunction with each other. And the reason I say the sun being in the 12th is because that may give you a more natural lover of solitude. And, then it's not something that is necessarily bad at all. It's something that you welcome and it works for you. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. You can be lonely with other people around. You can be perfectly content being all by your lonesome, all by yourself, and not feel like you're lacking anything. So loneliness is a state of mind based on something that you're telling yourself. But you may refuse to reach out because you don't want to appear dependent. You want to seem like you've got it together. This is something that is part of Saturn, is to be to be resourceful, kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps type of a mentality. And the thing is that when I said seek and refusal to seek help, so this might be the person who, if they did have an addiction, they would find it very hard to admit it and to soften their stance and allow somebody to help them, because they want to appear strong and they don't want to be dependent on somebody or something. Let me see what else. I really liked this term. I actually, I want to give a shout out to astrologyk.com. Really great resource for planets in signs, planets in the houses, I mean. And, but there was another site called Live About, I guess. I don't think it's liveabout.com. And they were talking about this Saturn placement, and they said the spiritual overachiever. I just loved that. I thought that was awesome, because Saturn is the ruler of the 10th house of career. So we're talking about success and reputation, in your social reputation, how people see you in terms of your, whether or not you're somebody who is successful in the world and that kind of thing. And you might really focus on that because on achieving something spiritual, because not only do you want to merge with God and experience that religious ecstasy, but you also want to maybe just be that kind of person who's an expert in spirituality or doing it as a career, because Saturn can represent that too. And so you might go overboard, like, I want to be the best yoga teacher, the best and the most knowledgeable. And I would say, I don't know if this is true, but I would just say on my own that somebody with Saturn in the 12th, if you were to get involved in these things, and there are several houses that I associate with spirituality, the 8th house and 9th house and the 12th house. And I would say the 12th house, along with the 8th house, is less structured than the 9th house. Saturn is about structure. And so the 12th house, because it's ruled by Neptune, is about dissolving. And so that means structure is at risk of being dissolved. But because you have Saturn here, you may say, I'm going to learn how to read the Akashic records. I'm going to learn how to do this and that, maybe teach yoga or something like that. But you're going to do it in the most methodical kind of a way, because and maybe taking courses with reputable or famous names, people that are experts in their field. You bring that kind of Capricornian mentality to this house. And so wanting the best, wanting the people who have made such an impact in this area. So I feel that you have the potential to be your own worst enemy. If you look at your crosses to bear as something that you are not resisting, but you are accepting, just like when that man wrote, accepting your karma happily. It doesn't mean you're wallowing in it, but you're just accepting it. I think you're going to do just fine. One of the things they quoted, and this was from some astrologer that they were quoting in liveabout.com, was, this house is about giving up or surrendering. And I often talk about this when I'm doing tarot readings, and I get the hangman, because the hangman is connected to Neptune, by the way, the ruler of that 12th house. And it's about surrendering to a situation where you're not trying to solve the problem anymore. You're just like allowing it, the art of allowing it to be what it is, and that being okay. And by the way, I did want to see what the karmic possibilities could have been, for somebody who has this, like from other lifetimes. And they were saying, like, mental illness, because the 12th house can indicate, it's like prisons, hospitals, places where people suffer. That can be the 12th house. And I would say like hermitages and things like that as well, where people go to maybe meditate by themselves and get away from it all. I think that can be 12th house. And in past lives, the person may have had, if there was some kind of abuse that you committed on somebody else, let's say you were a bully or did something like that. Now you have to experience that kind of situation, not out of punishment, but simply to know, to gain more information about how it would feel to have this. And by doing so, you may have to accept the help from people. Like, for instance, they were mentioning people who have like a very serious mental health condition like schizophrenia, who get hospitalized over and over again, and they have to allow themselves, they have to submit to being helped. And that humility, that willingness to let go, and I was going to say let go and let God, but it can be God in the form of other people who are like your angels to help you. And I'm not saying that everyone who has this placement has schizophrenia. I'm just saying if there is something along those lines, it may be telling you something about your need for being able to like allow yourself to appear in need of something, that you're not trying to be completely an island unto yourself. So, looking at your inner demons. And, the 8th and the 12th houses are similar that way, because we think about the 8th house as a shadow. So there might be some of that in the 12th house. And I'm trying to see if I missed anything, because I kind of jumped around here and there. No, I think I covered everything. And so anyway, well, one thing I wanted to say, because when I was talking about the drug experience and I was talking about the spiritual experience, Karl Marx, I believe, said something, about religion being the opiate of the masses. And you probably heard that quote, that phrase. And obviously, I think you probably know that I believe in God. But some people get so obsessed with finding God that if they're very, very in the mind, they may just take courses hoping to get in touch with something inside themselves that is greater than themselves. And that's, if that's what it takes. But other people are just not into that at all. And they don't like any kind of rituals or anything along those lines. So I don't know if that is exactly how this would play out. But some people may realize that the way things are set up is not conducive for them to get so caught up in religion that they lose sight of their own personal power. And it's very complicated, because I do believe that spiritual beliefs can really anchor our lives, and we can live by certain principles that are not necessarily religious in nature, but they still have that same kind of outcome. And so if you pursue any kind of spiritual practice or a lifestyle in that way, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. The only point is that you don't want to use it as a form of escapism. And for instance, well, I think I pretty much spelled it out, so I'm not going to continue with that. And I think I have covered everything I wanted to. I've gone over 30 minutes. So, anyway, I hope that this resonated with you. And if you would like a private reading, you can go to rainamoonastrology.com. The link is below. And I have some specials, which are double readings for a discounted price if you get the package. And you can see what types of readings those are. But yeah, so take care. Thank you for listening. Bye.